was born in Janajur.
Yes, sir.
I was born about 60 kilometers from Lahore. Its head works. My father was in the irrigation department, and at Balogi head works from here. Right. Thank you. Right. As I said that these are the events 48, 49, and in 49 Liaquat Ali Khan was prime minister and Qaid Azam had passed away in September 1948. And at that time, one interesting part is that Pakistan's population was 33.7 million at that time. And that included, that was what at that time was West Pakistan. Now we have a population of more than 222 million. Well, this again, I think that it's important that I got education in school up to class 8 in village schools, in district board, district council schools, and where we used to sit on darts. This is not the picture of that time. I just took it from, but that is to only demonstrate that this is the kind of schooling that we had. But even under those circumstances, there are two teachers that stand out. Although when I speak in English, I do not use the word Sahab. Mr. is enough. But these are two gentlemen, two teachers, the names of which I cannot pronounce without adding this postfix of Sahab. I cannot imagine calling their names like that. Master Jamaluddin Sahab was rather old, and he actually was also teacher of Master Muhammad Shafi. And he, at that time, I was in class 5, and he, after school, would identify 3-4 students, and that was a primary school. He was the headmaster, and he would coach us extra time. 3-4 students whom he thought that they would take part in scholarship examinations, and then they would be a source of pride for him. He didn't ask for any remuneration. He didn't even expect any remuneration, and that was not given. So he used to coach us, and at that time, he used to give us imla from Tarjumanul Quran, which was Quranic Tafsir journal, which came out every month. He was well versed with Persian, also with Arabic. So that was the kind of teacher that we had in primary school at that time. Then I shifted to another school, which was about 3 kilometers from our place of residence. And Master Jamaluddin Sahab also came over there, and Master Muhammad Shafi was there. Master Muhammad Shafi was such a dedicated teacher that I still remember the passion with which he used to teach. He used to teach us mathematics, he used to teach us English also, although his own English wasn't really good, but he prepared and he took classes like that. And in that school, when we were going to take the 8th class examination, they used to have evening classes. And they used to call the students from other villages to stay in the school during the last month, and they would coach us during the evening and night. They would take extra classes, and again, without any remuneration, so that the result of the school would be good. So we stayed there, although we were only about 3 kilometers, and we used bicycles to come and go. But the students stayed there, they had food there, etc., etc., and there were extra classes. So that passion, dedication, and hard work actually was worth observing at that time. And even at that age, I was say about 12 or 13, but I still absolutely clearly remember the face of those teachers, the way they used to take interest in the education. So this is actually very interesting. Now, on one side, I told you that I was in a art school, But at the same time, my father, he gave us a sense of dress and all that. And over here is my younger brother. And this is a photograph of around that time when I was in class 8 or so, or probably I was in class 6, 7. That is the time that this photograph was taken. So he imbibed in us the sense of dressing and discipline. My father always used to get the results from the school. I used to be first, second, third. So he would have the results of the top 3 students in all subjects from the school and compare those where I stood in that list. So that was something which kind of again was a stimulus for me to do as far as I can, do my best. So that's the importance. It's the importance of parents in children's education, in their upbringing, in their behavior, how they grow up to be whatever they are. So that's important, that despite our being busy in our day-to-day things, we need to address that, because that is the primary responsibility of parents, be that father or mother. But that's important, that that must be given. And as most of you would have children, or would have already have children, or would have children, but remember that as mothers or as fathers, it's your primary duty that you pay full attention to the upbringing of your children. Then I remember when first martial law was, that was 1958, Ayub Khan came into power, and that actually was followed by a kind of golden period in Pakistan's history. Politically, it is arguable. Martial law imposition is never a good thing, but that actually triggered, for various reasons, that is debatable, but that actually came about to be a very prosperous period for Pakistan, during which Pakistan made a lot of progress. There were dams which were built, family planning program came into being early on, and it was the martial law government that instituted. The health minister was Lieutenant Wajid Ali Barki. He is related to Imran Khan. As a matter of fact, General Wajid Ali Barki's son, Nosherwan Barki, is assisting or has been assisting during the last 3.5 years, Imran Khan in formulating the health policy, etc. No, whatever the merits and demerits of that, we will not go into that. But it was Wajid Ali Barki, General Wajid Ali Barki, who instituted or who started 3 institutions in Pakistan in 1962. One is College of Physicians and Surgeons, Pakistan, for which we should always be grateful to him. Second was Pakistan Medical and Dental Council. Before that, there wasn't that. And third was Pakistan Medical Research Council. That did not show that kind of prominence as CPSP, NP, and DC showed. But those are vital institutions. And many of us wouldn't be at the place wherever we are if CPSP wasn't there. So we move on to 1960s. I did my matric from Gujranwala Government High School. I studied there only for 1 year. And I was even at that time interested in news, etc. And on 22nd of November 1963, you do not know, maybe many of you wouldn't know, John F. Kennedy was president of the United States. He was a young, very handsome and charismatic person. And therefore, his assassination affected most of us. I mean, I at that time collected all the pictures that came in the newspapers of various stages, and I made an album of that. So that's why I mentioned it here. So I was interested in that. When I did matric, my father had a collection of books in home. He used to buy books and have them. And after my matric, before I went to the college for pre-medical, I had gone through these various authors, and they are considered to be stalwarts of Urdu literature. I would say modern, but modern is now, at that time they were modern, if nothing else, you must read Shafiqur Rahman, Hamakte, Kirne, Mazid Hamakte, etc. Shafiqur Rahman was a doctor and he was in army. He retired as lieutenant general, and I like his humor a lot. So I had read all those, and Amandeep Kasmi, Manto, and Ismat Shuktai, uh, Krishan Chandar, and Rajendra Singh Bell. These were the books that I read, and they have there's such an influence on you when you go through that. Then I came to FC College. FC College uh, did influence my personality. My roll number was 668063. Only last month, I had a friend who had come from USA, because he went to USA and settled there, but he was my class fellow at that time. And we still remember the roll numbers, that who had what roll number, and some of that friendship still carries on. But I like to hear, I would like to tell you something about those people who influenced at that time. FC College at that time became a 100-year-old institution. In 1964, I went there and studied for 2 years from 1964 to 66. And in 64, the college celebrated its centenary. FC College as well as Government College, both of them, they were 100. And I also participated in 2014 in the college's 150th anniversary. So, but that was quite a moment when President of Pakistan and other dignitaries, they came and we had a week of celebrations, etc., etc. And also then 1965 war. There were many events. I would not go into the details of that, but I can spend half an hour talking about this. Then I would want to tell you something about the influencers during FC College. E.J. Sinclair was our principal, Professor E.J. Sinclair. He was also our warden in the hostel for first year. In FC College, they have very good hostels. At least at that time, even first year students used to get a cubicle, a single room to them. And there were kind of rules which were to be followed. There was in the evening at 8 o'clock, the gates would close and you couldn't go out, etc. And the principal himself was the warden, so he maintained the balance. Professor T.S. Datta, he never taught us, but he was the dean of postgraduate studies. He interviewed me. He interviewed us who were getting admission. I had the second highest merit to get admitted in FC College. But when I had a bit of interaction with him, he said, "Son, if you want to remain here, you have to improve your English." So he advised me that. Mr. Aziz K. Dean, I remember him for his physics teaching. And then particularly Mr. Vernon Otto. He was our teacher of English. He was a gentleman personified. He spoke so softly, and we came from वो जैसे कहते हैं ना कि पिंडों थाओं से उठ के आ जाते हैं हम उस तरह के और अगर उनको हमारी बात beg your pardon, beg your pardon, and we weren't used to that kind of courtesies and niceties. But anyway, he influenced in the sense that when in 65 we were going for our summer vacations, he said, "What are you going to do?" He suggested to us, these are the first three English books that I bought at that time. And this one book is still with me. It is tattered, it is oldish. I dug it out from somewhere and still is lying on my table. And he said that these are three different kinds of writings and readings, and they'll initiate you in English. This is the author who won Nobel Prize, Pearl S. Buck, for Good Earth. Agatha Christie, I'm sure many of you would be conversant with that. And then Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who was, and this is the book that I bought at that time, The Hounds of Baskerville. So that introduced me to English literature and other things, and manners and etiquettes. So Mr. Vernon Otto was a great influence in that because when a friend of mine who was here from USA, we recalled how Vernon Otto used to kind of guide us in various things. And then I still am in contact, as a matter of fact, in close contact with these friends. They taught me quite a few things. Mahbubullah Sheikh, he is a family physician living in Lahore. We have family terms with him. Khurshid Iqbal is the one who came from United States and stayed for 1 month, he and his wife with us. And Intisar Siddiqui, uh, they couldn't become doctors, Khurshid and Intisar. Khurshid did PhD in pharmacy. He was head of a very research department of a pharmaceutical in USA. And Intisar Siddiqui he is the owner of Highmount Pharmaceuticals. And Pervez Rahman, he's a gastroenterologist in Texas over there. So Mahbubullah Sheikh, he taught me tolerance. Now, at that time, what happened, first year or second year, that boys started teasing each other, and they would stand there and pull someone's shirt out of the pants. So he was very close to me, one of the first friends that I made in FC College, and he came and he pulled my shirt out of my trousers. I just flew into a rage and just turned back and gave a big slap on his face. When I did that, immediately I felt sorry about it, but he just stood back. He didn't utter a single word. And immediately afterwards, we had a biology class, and I could see him sitting over there, and the imprint of my fingers on his face. Literally, I could see the redness on his cheek. But he didn't say anything, and we remained friends. And we didn't speak about what happened. But that is something which was a great lesson to me. Yeah, Khurshid, I have traveled the east coast of the United States and Canada from east to west with him, and by car, etc. He is a great traveler. Even at that time, after FSC, he traveled to Turkey and Jordan and Iraq and Iran on his own. At the age of about, say, 18 or so. So these are the friends. So it's important to have friends and learn from them, contribute, keep in contact with those who are dear to you. It is important for our social fabric, for our lives to remain. I mean, you can go back, recall, and talk about things, and those are the things which at times become very important to you. Then I went to Nishtar Medical College. You see, this now it is university. If you look at here, Nishtar Medical College has, at that time, it was an excellent campus. Like FC College was and still is an excellent campus. Nishtar at that time, this is the college building. This is the hospital. When I went there, there were only 4 blocks up to here, but later on these were added. And this is the nursing hostel, a very large one. Here were the professors' residences. And on this side were the hostels. And this was the large playground. I was in this hostel. This was known as Avicenna Hostel, Ibn Sina Hall. And this college building is over here. You can see it's extremely pleasing to eye, very nice hall. This is the hall, etc. And this is called the quadrangle. And then the hospital building is also quite majestic. Even at that time, it was essentially majestic. Now it is, I'm sure that it's overcrowded and all that. When you entered the hospital, there was a bank on one side, there was a post office, there was all those amenities were there in the close to the entrance over there. And the faculty at that time, when I went in to the college in 1966, if you look at the faculty, they were all PhDs in anatomy, in physiology, and PhD from abroad, from United States. And they were amongst the finest and best teachers. Professor Gulzar Ahmed stood out. We didn't have to consult a book of physiology. Whatever he came and he didn't dictate us. He just explained things and we took our own notes. Every student would take their own notes, and those notes were enough for passing the examination for understanding. He was such a clear-minded teacher that वो जिस तरह से तावीज़ घोल के पिला देने वाली बात है, इस तरह से, and this is how प्रोफेसर नजीरुद्दीन अहमद वो नफासत की मिसाल, उनको वो जून की गर्मी में वहां पे मुल्तान में सूट पहनते. He was tall, 6'4". आजकल स्किन कॉम्प्लेक्शन के बारे में बात करना ठीक नहीं है, बट he was fair complexion, red पठान और एक पंजाबी पठान और and meticulous. उनके बारे में मशहूर था कि कॉलेज के ज़माने में he had love affair, he couldn't marry and he never married. वो ना हो सका, उन्होंने शादी ही नहीं की. तो Professor M.A. Farrukh, he had a full, quite a few lines of degrees. Only 3 I have written, which are very, very prominent: PhD, Doctor of Sciences, and a Farsi path. One important lesson which he gave us, he used to deliver and talk mostly in Punjabi in the classroom. But one important thing that he said was, which I have quoted many times, and I still would quote to people who are embarking upon a career. He was interested in pathology and he went to United States to do post-graduation in pathology. But he couldn't get a job in pathology, and something in public health was available. So he joined that. And in public health, he put all his attention and his efforts in public health, but kept that goal of pathology still in his mind. He excelled in that, he taught, and his supervisor and teacher or head of department in public health was so impressed with him that he gave him a referral for one of the best pathology units in the United States, where then he went and then he completed his dream of doing pathology and excelled in that. And he said that I took that examination and I made a record because there were so many slides or etc. And I was the first one who did ever recognize all the slides correct. So that is, nobody can break my record. They can equal my record. So that was the kind of application. This is one of the lessons which I'll come to you later on, which he at that time said that if you set your eyes at a goal, then you must continue with that. And but whatever opportunity comes to you, don't while away your time. Do your best in that, and maybe that will open the doors for you to whatever you want to achieve. So that was a great faculty that we had. We were lucky and fortunate in having that. And this is an old picture of, this is Professor G.N. Lassi. This is Professor Hayat Zafar, who was principal there later. He is father of Professor Fareed Zafar. Professor Lone, he was ENT. Professor Sayyid Zafar Haider, he passed away. He was professor of surgery at King Edward Medical College. जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम. हाँ जी ठीक. हाँ DNC वो आप कर रहे हो तो कर लो, ठीक है, अच्छी बात है, तो कर दें प्लीज. थैंक यू वेरी मच. थैंक यू. जस्ट गो अहेड. हाँ कमाल है, आपको कहने की जरूरत है. नहीं 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 नहीं, प्लीज गो अहेड. हाँ जी ओके. This is Professor Gulzar Ahmed. This is Professor Nazir Ahmed. This is Professor N.A. Syal. Many of you must have heard about him, the gynecologist who was Professor Rashid's inspiration. And this I am not, these two I do not recognize. And this is Professor Rauf Ahmed, one of the great physicians, great teachers in medicine. ये GN Lassi हैं, Professor GN Lassi. No, वो ये है Professor, हाँ, क्रिस्टोफर ली से इनकी काफी शक्ल मिलती थी. And then in medicine, we have Professor Rauf Ahmed Khan, Professor Iftikhar, who was principal of Allama Iqbal and then principal of King Edward, and Professor Hayaz Zafar, Professor Rashid Qureshi, a celebrated surgeon, Professor Zafar Haider, and Professor Ijaz Hassan came in as a young professor when we were in final year, and Professor Hayaz Zafar also came in when we were in final year. Naseem Arasha and Professor Iqbal Rashid Mia. Professor Iqbal Rashid Mia, later on I worked, my first appointment as assistant professor was with Professor Iqbal Rashid Mia, and Professor Shaukat Raza in pediatrics, Sardar Ali, ye the was a Professor Ijaz Qureshi ENT ke Naila Mubashir ke father. This is my father in 1972. This is my mother and my father. This is four of us. This is myself. I was in probably second or third year in medical, and this is my younger brother. Unfortunately, all three of them have departed. Now, in 1969, when I was in third year at that time, the first landing on moon by man was made at that time in 1969. So that was a great achievement. And if one wanted to learn some lessons from that, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. These were the first words that Neil Armstrong, when he stepped on the moon, he uttered. And the lessons that you learn from this, the impact that they would make, one can spend quite a few hours on discussing that. Then I'd like to mention here at that time, my younger brother and a friend. I would say this is my younger brother. This is the friend Asmat Kamal, who became an eye specialist, and my younger brother was a friend of mine also. So, and this friend of mine was also like a brother to me. He also passed away. He passed away in 2016, and my younger brother passed away in 2017. So we'll always cherish. I still miss them. I mean, there were things which I shared with either of them, with both of them. We used to enjoy to the extent that we would just mention a joke and we would laugh together. So that is the kind of thing. And now I'm finding another friend in that sense, and that's my grandchild, the one. I certainly found that I have that kind of a little bit of equation. I'm going to tell him that you are my friend, because he behaves with me in that fashion. So I thought that after these two, he'll be my friend. Now then, Pakistan in 71, it is important to go back and see what Pakistan was like before, from 47 to 71. This is something that you also need to realize from time to time. This is history that you need to look at, that this was the West Pakistan province and this was East Pakistan. And you know, at that time when on radio, the news came in, they used to say 1 p.m. West Pakistan time, 2 p.m. East Pakistan time. They used to start like that. वो न्यूज़ होती थी उर्दू में, अंग्रेजी में और उस तरह से, लेकिन वो इस तरह से चलता था. And then also from 1955 to 1970, what is now Pakistan is used to be one unit. It only was one province. Lahore was the capital of that. And you know, someone who needed a posting in Karachi was dependent upon Secretary Health sitting in Lahore. So, and if some posting is to be done in Hyderabad, Sakhar, that was, or Peshawar for that matter, they were dependent upon the secretary sitting in Lahore. So that was one unit, which was then again divided back into provinces. From 47 to 55, there were 4 provinces. And in 70, they reverted back to these provinces. And you should also remember that this area, which is striped in pink, this is Gilgit-Baltistan, and only this area is Azad Kashmir, because full Kashmir is like this. And that larger part of Kashmir as it is with India, and we have a smaller part of Kashmir here. But India also says that this part is also, these northern territories are also disputed. That's why Gilgit-Baltistan is given different, even from Pakistan's point of view, is that, but that's different. That you should know. This is a matter of general knowledge. And then if you look at this area, this is what used to be FATA, federally administered tribal areas, but they have now been included in the province of KPK, which previously was called NWFE, Northwest Frontier Province. So in National Medical College, there were certain, like I said, that I had some bit of Urdu literature, some bit of English literature. In Nishtar, I had regular subscription of Reader's Digest and Time magazine. Time magazine now costs about, I think, 500 rupees per week. At that time, it used to cost 70 pesos. And the distance of railways, Multan railway station to National Medical College was 3 kilometers, and the rickshaw fare was 50 pesos, half a rupee. Now you don't have 50 pesos. Now 50 pesos coin is non-existent. In even 5 rupees coin is like, has less value than 50 pesos. But that was the value of money at that time. And I was extracurricular activities, reading, magazine, etc. But I was a hostel secretary, and here I am receiving a trophy for best hostel function from Professor Naziruddin Ahmed. This is Nishtar final year, and this is Azmat Kamal, this is myself, and this is in front of the anatomy department. It's called Rose Garden. It's a large garden, really nice. I hope that still is there. Saida can relate to that because she is from there. Well, from Nishtar, I got a degree. I got inspiration to become a gynecologist. I made lifelong friends, and I also got a wife. Same class. Same class, yes. Yeah. So these are the 4 things that I got, which were very important. That I got my MBBS and inspiration to become a gynecologist, because when I was there, Dr. Rashid came in as assistant professor. I was in final year and he came as assistant professor. I was average student. I would consider myself to be a little below average medical student. I never had a fail in any subject. I passed all the examinations, but I didn't really think myself, at that time, I didn't think myself to be a good student, nor do I still wouldn't place myself. It is only after MBBS that I thought that I should work hard. But I got that inspiration to become a gynecologist. I'll show to you just in a, but when I was in final year, I used to feel, and I still recall myself saying that this is the best year of my life so far. Probably also because I was romantically involved at that time. But that was that. And then I knew that I would be leaving, and this is the last part of, that studentship. Abhi aa jayegi. नहीं, at that time we never had a picture together. No, वो नहीं, ऐसा भी नहीं था, इतनी भी नहीं थी बात. So 1970s, unfortunately, it also started with something bad, which was 1971 war. And we had our final professional examination from September to October 1971 when a war was there. And on 8th of December, 12 days before my result of final year came, I joined Pakistan Army. Yeah, because we were called, all those who had taken final year examination, they were called in to join army. And here That is the army photograph. And these were the, actually we were in field. This is not the picture of that time. This is from net, but this exactly is the kind of tents that I lived in for about 3 years in army, in open, etc. But I thoroughly enjoyed that. I learned quite a lot of things. At that time, it was compulsory. We were given those who failed and had supplementary so-called supplies, they were released. But those who passed, they continued for 3 years. And some of quite brilliant students, they continued army as their career. But remember, in final year, after looking at the energy and commitment and the way Dr. Rashid conducted himself, I decided to become a gynecologist. So I never lost that sight, having been 3 years in army. And I'll tell you, later on, I had a lot of difficulty in finding a job in gynecology even at that time. So, as an army doctor, I used to go with the various army units to exercises, and I fired a tank also. They would make the doctor come in and say, "Doctor, you fire." They would cock it up, and that's still near Jhelum. That's range where they do their exercises. So went in the tank and then pulled the lever to fire the tank. And then this is the gun. This is a medium gun, they call it. So ye bhi kya. It was a great experience. And there are quite a few traits in my personality, which again, a very dear friend, Khalid Bloch Marhum, he used to say, he was my registrar when I was senior registrar. He always used to say, even now, till recently, sir, pata lagta hai ki aap army mein rahe. So wo wali cheez hai. These are the things: discipline, hierarchical relationship, authority, leadership, responsibility, improvisation, putting up with hardship. Because in June, you are in tent under the sun, and with full kind of uniform, etc. So that was a great experience. It was a 3 years long kind of picnic. And this is 1973. I got married on 31st of March. We just had 49th anniversary 6 days back. So next year we'd be, inshallah, completing our 50 years. This is a sad chapter, but it also needs to be remembered. And this is the reason opposition calls Imran Khan Niazi. They refer to this Niazi, Amir Abdullah Niazi, who was the commander of Pakistan forces in East Pakistan when they surrendered to, I forget his name, the Indian commander. And why they say Imran Niazi, because to emphasize that Niazi was the person who surrendered. But it was not the person of Niazi who surrendered. Remember that. It was the state of Pakistan. He represented state of Pakistan. It was not his individual surrender. He would have laid down his life. Anybody would have. But it was his responsibility to keep the welfare of those 90,000 or 93,000 people who were under his charge. So I will never consider this to be a personal, individual surrender of a person or General Niazi. It was the Pakistan state and Pakistan. I wouldn't even say Pakistan Army. It was our policies or whatever. So it is wrong to make someone the scapegoat of that. But then, this again is important. We became enamored with the, I didn't spend some time on 1965 war. That was also wanted. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, Benazir's father. This is Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. This is Benazir at that time. This is Sardar. Suddenly, he was foreign minister of India at that time. And Bhutto previously used to have negotiations with him. And this is Indira Gandhi, and this is signing of similar agreement. And I think that it was a great achievement of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto to have signed similar agreement. Remained a disputed area, but at the same time, we got our territories back, and we got I was in army at that time, and I was part of that. I was providing medical cover to those units who were clearing that area which previously was occupied by Indian forces. But anyway, that was a great achievement by Bhutto. But later on, he was a genius. He was a very intelligent person, but he brought about a lot of harm to Pakistan also. in terms of his bad policies. So I will not go into detail of that. But then when I got released from army, I wanted to work in gynecology and I didn't get a job in gynecology. Professor Rashid at that time was posted in Bahawalpur as professor of gynecology. So I went to Bahawalpur, and at that time he didn't have a job with him, and I joined as casualty medical officer. And for 6 months, I worked as casualty medical officer in Bahawal Victoria Hospital. And then I suddenly was posted as registrar of surgery. I didn't have a single day's experience in surgery, and I was posted as registrar surgery with Professor Shabir Naru. Do you know, have you heard of Professor Shabir's name? He retired from King Edward Medical College later. Here he is Professor Shabir Naru. Professor Ghulam Mustafa, he was as assistant professor, a great influence again. This is myself. This is Professor Maqsood. He later on did pharmacology and became professor of pharmacology. This is Professor Hamid of anesthesia. And this is Dr. Ishfaq. He became later an eye specialist. So for about 7-8 months. And that surgical experience gave me I could do at that time intestinal anastomosis and things like that. So that kind of bladder repair and things. So that was useful. That came handy. And I told you about the faculty of National Medical College at that time. We had an absolutely fantastic and illustrious faculty. But the person who impressed me was Assistant Professor Dr. Rashid Latif. You see, not any of the professors, and it is for the way he conducted himself. I mean, he was teacher at that time and he taught us. So I decided to become a gynecologist. So here is the motivation. And I'm sure that you have had the privilege of having his teachings, energy, enthusiasm, hard work, which he still, he is more hardworking than any of us sitting or in this room, or even those who are listening. He's still going on with that, and may Allah keep him in that fashion. So I think I'll stop here, but this is actually the part that I wanted to talk about. I'll just spend 5 minutes here. अच्छा, तो इसमें ये था, there were 2 units and 4 beds, and 1 consultant, 1 registrar, and 2 or 3 house officers. So 24/7 registrar. And on alternate day we had emergency. And I was their registrar and senior registrar. So because of that, I had the opportunity of doing all that. Though by the end of 2nd year of my training, I had performed all those procedures. It was only possible because in that kind of busy unit, I was the one who was doing it. And after joining in February 1976, in June 77, I had done MCPS. And in इसमें वो आया नहीं है, लेकिन 79 में मैंने FCPS कर लिया था. और ये फिर मैंने ये इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स दिखाए कि ये वाली चीजें, और ये इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स खास तौर पे जो कि ऑब्सलीट हैं, जो कि म्यूजियम पीसेस हैं, ये मैंने खुद इस्तेमाल किए हैं. This is known as the cranial perforator. This is Willet's forceps, which was used at that time for patients with placenta previa and who were bleeding heavily. And and the facility for cesarean section was not there. The Willet's forceps was attached to the scalp of the fetus skull, and the fetus was pulled down to so that the fetal head would compress the low-lying placenta and thereby arrest the bleeding until full dilatation of the cervix and delivery. And cranioclast, and these were the in obstructed labor, dead fetus, and you passed this middle thing into the head, and then pass these two blades outside the skull. So we crushed the skull, and then got a hold of a strong hold on the skull, and then pulled the baby out. So these were, and then of course this ventouse and all that, but we'll get to that later on, and that too in only our limited class, not on online class, right? So we'll go on from here. Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Yes, Assalamualaikum, sir.
Hello. Walaikum assalam.
Assalamualaikum, sir. Assalamualaikum, sir.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum, sir. Happy to see you.
Thank you. Can you see me? I can't see you. Well,
Assalamualaikum.
वैसे इस्लाम में तो हुक्म है मैं सिर्फ एक ही दफा वालेकुम सलाम को, अगर आप सबको कहने लगूं तो 100 दफा तो यही कहता जाओ। चले वालेकुम सलाम। अभी इमरान शफी ने मुझे कहा